working. Good evening and welcome to the Cottonwood Heights City Council business meeting. Today is July 19th, 2022, and my name is Mayor Mike Wickers. I have asked Council Member Scott Bracken to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Let's start it. Thank you, Councilmember Bracken. Before we move on to item 3.0, I wanted to mention we had a fire take place in our city yesterday, and I wanted to thank UFA, our United Fire Authority, who we contract fire services with, for their professionalism and ability to get up and mitigate disaster and loss of life. They worked in conjunction with Sandy City. I actually had a conversation with Mayor Zoltansky today and thanked her for their willingness through interlocal agreements to respond to a potential disaster and emergency. And it's interesting, Sandy's entire police department or fire department was deployed into our city, and talked to Chief Pilgrim, and we had multiple engines and ladder trucks that went all in the name of saving lives and trying to save structures. So Mayor Zoltansky the week previous had just increased their ladder truck from 2 to 3, which, if you don't know what that means, it allows when you have 3 on a truck to send 1 person in, 2 people have to stay with the truck. And so they were able to help and to get inside the structure and to bring people out to safety. So I just wanted to emphasize and make the point how grateful we are for, United Fire and for the protection and services, and for Sandy City for responding. So thank you.
Yes, and I will just add on to that as the District 4 representative. It was really so appreciated, and the neighbors who have told me how great the service was, and the to see that the resident got out of there safe and sound and everything. So again, thank you for what you do for our city.
And as you know, I believe our staffing at 163 firefighters.
110, I think, is at 4, right? Yeah. Oh. Well, thank you. So next on our agenda this evening is 3.0, which is City Council Committee Reports. This is a new item on our agendas for our business meetings. And before we get going, I want you to know how much I appreciate our City Council. So you might think, if you pay attention, that the City Council just comes to City Council meetings and votes, and they actually are really involved in the community. They spend time on different committees, going to meet citizens, going to look at things that they want to talk about. And so what I've decided is that we're gonna give a 3-minute council report to the council, and we're gonna ask that they tell you what they do, tell you some of the things that they do, some of the committees they're on, some of the things that they're working on, and then things that are important to them. And so I'm gonna begin with Council Member Burrell. If you would take 3 minutes.
Well, I had a little epiphany the other day on the pickleball court. I happened to notice that our Mayor Peterson, who we know we have to thank for the leadership on pickleballs over at the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center, he happened to be playing pickleball with his wife, and but as I left the courts, they had separated, and he was playing with a man, and she was playing with a partnered with a woman. And as I walked by their court on my way to my car, I saw Mayor Peterson hit a marvelous long stroke that hit inside the court. And I called out, "Way to go, Mayor Peterson." To which the woman near me on the court said, "Well, we have called it out." And so by the time I got to my car, I was thinking that what is so important as we work, especially now on our general plan, is that we have to remember that perspective and bias play they do on the pickleball court and they do in life. And so this idea that we each have our perspective and we have natural bias built in to want to see the ball come inside or outside the white line. And so it allows me to segue into my comments that, we are thankful for Mayor Peterson and what he did for the city during his time, as well as I'd like to also acknowledge Christine Michael, who was my predecessor here on the council, and her efforts towards sustainability and other great measures during her time. I also want to, as the mayor alluded to, mention that there's been a number of wonderful constituents in our city who have contacted me over the things that they care deeply about, such as Jerry Snow and Gordon Walker and their concerns for affordable housing. I've had a number of residents contact me about their concerns about water conservation. And this brings to one of the things that I am very interested in, and that is to pay really attention that we are going from drought conditions to really a long-term aridification. And so the point here is that as our city is putting together good policies and has some good policies in place, the idea of residents being supported to do things like flip their strip. In fact, the 2021 survey that the staff conducted found out that the two impediments to more people flipping their strip from grass to preferably low water. Oh my gosh, is my 3 minutes over? Oh, I haven't even begun. Okay, I'm going to plead. I will be as quick as I can, but so many constituents are talking about the landscaping and what can be done. There's been a lot of concerns mentioned to me about the new lawns being put in over around Brighton High School. In our time of trying to reduce lawns, we want to make sure we water our trees. Can't let all these our trees die. I want to mention that the historical committee has made a really fantastic success, and that is that their oral histories program is their first leg of that has been completed, and there is great oral history on both Kelvin Colomar and our other previous mayor Mike Peterson, and you can access that through the Cottonwood Heights website. I want my constituents to know that we're going to be putting information out not only about an update on the Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS related to both Little Cottonwood Canyon and Wasatch Boulevard, and you can watch for that in the upcoming newsletters or contact me if you want to talk about that. And I'm going to, unfortunately, not rattle down through a longer list, but I am keeping my website, which is called voteellenburrell.com, up to date on topics. You can also sign up for my newsletters if you want to get more information on what I'm doing within District 4 and here on the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Burrell. Councilmember Newell.
Great, thank you. I think a lot of the things that we're all working on, Ellen had mentioned, her note to everyone. Some of the things that I work on, I'm also belong to 3 different committees here in the city. Our budget committee, our arts council, and then also our emergency management. But we also work on things that are above and beyond what we do here in the city quite often. And some of those efforts you're really not privy to or don't hear about. One of them that I'm working on right now is our broadband access. And this is access for all Utahns, which will actually come down and trickle down to impact us here in Cottonwood Heights to be able to provide quality broadband access to all of our citizens. We've had a number of presentations here at the city from some of those providers, but I've been attending these meetings from the Utah as part of the Utah Broadband Alliance, which is a group of all the providers of internet and phone services, cellular phone service throughout the Intermountain West. And we're having discussions on how to best provide services for our citizens, understanding that technology and innovation is going to continue to expand, and not creating gaps for our citizens and adding cost, but being able to add efficiency in those areas. Another thing that I'm working on right now is also with our office of the government's new office. It used to be GOED, now it's the GO office, but there's an office of Utah Economic Opportunity, and there's a commission there, and we're working on government efficiencies. I'm working with a couple of our senators side by side to reach out to business and industry, municipalities, to find out how we can best improve removing barriers to quality and effective policymaking and innovation when it comes to our citizens being able to start their businesses, to be able to ask for services that are, supplied by our larger municipalities or service providers, and then also making sure that we're not creating any disparities for any of our citizens in any of our citizen areas here in the state of Utah. And those things trickle down to us as a city. It's important that we are engaged, not just here with you as our residents, which is our most important value and concern, but also looking at those impacts that come from a higher level in our state that can end up coming down and impacting us. And these things are really critical. And I take them to heart, and I find it as a way for me to really be able to provide some other insights and opportunities for growth for us as citizens in a way that is outside of what you may see as us being on the city council.
Thank you, Councilmember Newell. Councilmember Peterson.
Thanks, Mayor. When we're asked to speak about some of the things that we do, I was thinking all of us are on various different committees, but I figure about 2 hours a day I'm speaking to citizens just in my district. And that's one of the favorite things, one of the things that I enjoy the most. I'm on the Salt Lake Mosquito Abatement District. I know that most of you here probably like mosquitoes, so I don't know that if you don't like what I do there, but that's a joke, by the way. I detest mosquitoes. I'm still trying to figure out a reason we have them here on Earth, but it's amazing what we're able to do to help the city through the mosquito abatement, and that is they provide many services, and hopefully that each one of you have an opportunity to learn a little bit about that. Any ponds or anything like that, there's a lot of disease control through that. One of the toughest committees I'm on is compensation committee. We're assigned to. That's a tough one because you try to weigh the balance of compensation and sustainability. So that's a tough one. Business development is a big part of what we do here in the city to try to welcome businesses into the city and to be able to help and assist them in any way that we can. And Sherry Martell is wonderful in our city that works with us on that. Parks, Trails, and Open Space is a very important and crucial committee that I'm on, and I'm so grateful for the different things that we're able to accomplish. Right now we have, in my district alone, we have 3 parks, and some of the allocation of the money that we get through grants and different things that we have to decide how to best use that money, especially when bids now are coming in so high, we have to decipher what to use that on. We have calls every day on streets, on speeds on streets, streets that fall apart, drains that don't drain, different things like that. Right now we have La Cresta cut through, I'll call it, that I'm trying to help mitigate the problems of that. I enjoy working with the mayor and the council on the many things that we undertake to do on a daily basis. When you see us sitting up here for a little hour, this is just the tip of the iceberg on the many things that we're entrusted to do and to help make living in Cottonwood Heights a wonderful place to live, and I do appreciate this opportunity to work on the council.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson. Councilmember Bracken.
Um, I do a number of things with the city. I am on the budget committee with, Councilmember Newell. The external, responsibility I have is I'm on the board of the Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District that provides our garbage, recycling, glass, and green collections every week and month, and does the other, things with keeping the city clean and the garbage out of here. I talked to the director yesterday. Our turn for calling and getting a container delivered to the individual homes. The sign up for that is coming up very quickly. Postcards will be coming out. They're having a little bit of trouble with their new website and getting that working. So if you get that, and I've asked, is to call in and be a little bit patient. They are trying to get that worked out. Hopefully they will get it out soon. So by the time our postcards arrive and we can start signing up to receive those, we usually have 12 or 13 days in a row that we have the containers that can be brought out that you can put in your bulk waste. I serve on the Butlerville Days Committee. That's obviously important as it's coming very soon. It'll be 3 days this year. We'll have the carnival, a lot of the same activities. You should have received a program for it in the newsletter that was sent out. It's also available on the city website and on their Facebook page. Connected to or interconnected with Butlerville Days is my assignment with CH2. That's Cottonwood Heights Squared, the Cottonwood Heights Parks and Recreation Service Area. The rec center, as most people are familiar with it, is a separate entity from the city, but we have a monthly meeting coordination where we discuss what needs to happen in the parks, various things that they take care of for us, they maintain. The parks that we have, they maintain streetscapes, things like that. And it's a nice way to cross coordinate what's going on between the two ends. They are also big supporters of Butlerville Days. And then the last committee or group that I work with is our Youth City Council. It's a group of students in high school that come and put in service work for the cities. They ushered the play recently. They'll be helping Butlerville Days, Easter egg hunt, all those types of activities the city does, they help. We also have educational opportunities for the kids to learn about how municipalities work, and then we occasionally have socials with them as well. And then I come on Tuesdays.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracken. We let me just reiterate one more time. I'm grateful for this council. They're not just here because they're here because they're concerned about our city and they want to represent citizens and their wishes. But they're great people, and they have respect for each other. And even though we disagree at times, I just want to reemphasize thank you for all that you do. Real quickly, let me give you just a couple things that I wanted to talk about. So interesting, I am a board member for United Fire Authority. So I sit on that board with some other mayors and a couple of county council people. And I this morning I was nominated to be the vice chair of the board, which I consider a huge honor, and which means that in January I will take over as the chair of the board of directors. Okay, which I consider a good honor. Like I said, I actually received an email today. I was nominated to be a board member for the Salt Lake County Board of Health, and I was notified today that I will now also be on the Salt Lake County Board of Health. So I am adding to my list of responsibilities, Doug. What I mostly wanted to talk about is I am the liaison for the Canyon School District. And we had a meeting with our board members, Amber Schill and Nancy Tingy, about 3-4 weeks ago, 2-3-4 weeks ago. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up with these board members was, that meeting wasn't too long after the shooting that we had in Texas. And so I wanted to really emphasize to them how important that it was to me that our schools were prepared, and that we as a city and as a police department were doing everything possible to support our schools and to make sure that we're prepared. And so what's happened is we are going to be meeting as they the principals come back. I think Thursday we'll be meeting with Brighton High School's principal. And Chief Russo will be joining me along with our resource officer over there and city manager, and we will be discussing with them their plans, what they do in case of an active shooting. And we will be going over those and make sure that they understand that, you know, we want to be involved in that process. Chief Russo and I will then be visiting our junior high school, Butler, and then and the 5 elementary schools. And we are going to make sure that they feel comfortable with the plans, and that they know that our police department is prepared and actually does drills. And I'm actually going to turn some time over to Chief Russo. We do a drill every year, and I want him to talk about, if he would, what that drill encompasses. So, Chief.
Well, thank you. And let me start by telling you that, echoing your words, that the police department is also very grateful for this council. We appreciate the support that you've been
There are
giving us.
pictures on the screen, by the way, that are of the last drill that took place over.
And they are, and as we go through them, I hope they're not too disturbing, but what you're seeing is, you know, as a result of not just Uvalde, but of all the school shootings, and it's important that we don't ever become desensitized to the fact that this is the world we live in, and we have to be prepared, practice, drill, and most importantly, do what we can to identify threats before they actually occur. But it's clear that we have to have a plan, work the plan, and practice the plan. So what you're seeing are, we use the actual schools because it's important that the officers actually know what the interior footprint and the barriers of the school look like, and the things you normally wouldn't think about, like, does that door open in or out, and how would we breach that door, and where would a person, an active shooter, be? And we set up different scenarios. What they are using are real weapons, but the weapons are loaded with what's called simunitions. Best way to describe that is paintballs, small paintballs, but they are loaded into actual ammunition, like 9mm or 223, and so they can load the firearms with it. We use juvenile actors who will pose scenario threats or barriers when we go into the school. They might be injured. They might be just running to you for help. They might cling on to you. They might be giving you information. And we, as you see in that picture, we have kids running and away from the scene. The guy in the vest is a safety officer. We film what we do. We debrief it. We take pictures of it. We talk about it, and we do it again, and we do it again. And so when or if, unfortunately, we hope this never happens, but if it does, that the response will be second nature. They won't be thinking. They won't be waiting for orders. They will know what the orders are, and they will take action, which is, as you know, very, very important. In this situation, in this picture here, this is actually the active shooter. And you can see where he's got people on the ground, and in the background, you'll see the officers approaching. So they have to make a determination. Do we take a shot there, or do we keep, encountering, the threat? And you don't know whether that gunman is alone or whether he's got other people in the school with him. So they practice on that. We have model explosive devices that we use along the way, so that the officers and the first team's in, second team's in, everybody knows what to do if you encounter them. So it's no surprise. They don't have to wonder or ask what to do. They've encountered this before, and so they're prepared to deal with it. Also, is there next? Okay. So in this one, you see some of the students and what they've been told to do were approach the officers and grab onto them and distract them, try to stop them as they're going down the hallway, which actually occurs as kids are running away from a scene, and then the officers have to learn how to deal with that. And if you see an injured person, a kid who's been shot in the hallway, they have to know what to do or not to do. Do you walk past that person and continue on to the shooter? What do you do? And we teach them what to do. And we have a plan for that. So go on to the next one. Are there more? Or is that it? I think that's it, but that in a nutshell, that looks, let me tell you about this. One of the criticisms they had in some of the school shootings early on was that the old way to handle these was to do it as a barricaded suspect, which is one of the terms they used in Uvalde, which is wrong. If you have an active shooter in a school, you do not surround the school and wait for the SWAT team to come. What you see here is a triangle formation. The first 3 officers get there. They're not waiting for a sergeant. They're not waiting for permission, not waiting for direction. They practice, they know what to do. The first 3 officers go in there, you have the point and you have 2 officers on the side, and that is the attack team. And they will go in the first door available to them, and they will be prepared to encounter any threat and neutralize it. So with that, I hope that that's a short story of what we do. But we do go, so you know, this was at Brighton High School. It's the newest high school. Many of the officers were unfamiliar with it because they don't go there on a daily basis. So it's important for them to learn what that school looks like. But we go into every elementary school, the junior high, so that if we have a problem there, they will already have been there and know what to expect. So thank you. Any questions?
Chief, amazing, awesome. You know, keeping our kids safe. I don't know if there's a more important thing that we can do. So I just want to say thank you for, you know, I asked a lot of questions and I love some of the answers I've gotten. So what this does and being prepared, there's not a more important thing to do. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And we, as a police department, we know what your expectation is. And we want, our job is to keep the citizens safe. Our job is to try to keep the officers safe. That said, every officer knows my expectation is that they will go in there and they will put themselves above the anything else. They will put themselves between the shooter and the kid. There's no waiting, there's no discussion, there's no cowardice. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for being led by the right person. So thank you. So that'll conclude the council comments. Now we're going to move to item 4.0, which is a citizen comment period. This is a time for citizens to address the council concerning whatever matters they desire. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Please review the public comment procedures on the last page of tonight's agenda. If you haven't already filled out a speaker comment card, please do so and hand it to a staff member. We'll get it to you. When making citizen comments, we request that you speak into the microphone so that your comments can be heard and recorded, and that you give your name and that you avoid insulting language or comments. The audience should avoid expressions of support or disagreement, such as clapping or hissing, so that all speakers will feel like they can safely express their thoughts. The council's here to listen, but you shouldn't expect to engage in a back and forth dialogue. If you raise questions, staff will respond to you within a few business days to discuss your questions and provide responses. So the first person that I'll have come up tonight is Leslie Kovac. I think.
Good evening.
Did I say that right, Leslie?
Yes, Kovac.
Kovac, okay.
Good evening. I want to actually come here and say thank you to the council and thank you for listening to us and putting up the sign on Wasatch Boulevard about the Jake breaks. I'm really pleased that it's up there, but what I'm asking for now is more enforcement of the Jake breaks. We're still hearing them come down Wasatch Boulevard in addition to all the speed racing that's going up the boulevard all the time. So there is still continued noise problems up there. I don't know how to help you and help our police department stop the Jake breaks from running down there, but I do really applaud the effort in putting the sign up. So at least there is some enforcement that can be had. So thank you. Thank you for listening, because I've been up here a lot saying it. I'll probably still be here again, but thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Leslie. I really appreciate that. So the next comment card is for David Lehman.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for listening to me. And I'd really like to thank Rick. I'm glad to be informed. I live on Lower Siesta Drive, 1271 Siesta Drive. And right now, you guys all probably know that Dominion is redoing the gas line. And it's got me concerned because ever since I've lived there since 1988, when we get a severe thunderstorm, we have one storm drain. One storm drain. And I've complained about it and complained about it, but now I'm really going to complain because all those trenches that have been dug in that road, Michelle, Monterey Circle, Siesta Drive, if we get a storm, that road base is going to wash down into the only drain that catches the drain water. And that's right in front of my house. So needless to say, I've experienced flood after flood after flood. It doesn't come in my house, but it fills my driveway. It goes down the side of the house, goes into my tool shed. And while it's doing that is it's depositing everybody's deleterious material that's inside those gutters. It plugs up the storm drain. Now, Cottonwood Heights has requested or required that how do I put this? I don't want to say a dam, but there's a filter that goes over the top of the grading in that one storm drain, and it plugs up really fast because the water can't go through it when it's full of leaves and all this other stuff. When this storm comes, I hope it doesn't, we're all praying for rain, but I tell you, I know what's going to happen. It's going to flood me. Only I'm going to get all that road base in front of my house, in my driveway, down the side. Then it would go down the side of my house into the Young's yard. They've got a really nice place. From there, it'll carry on to the natural place it's supposed to go, and that's in Little Cottonwood Creek. I need your help. I need the help to get that something done. Number one, you ought to take them sieves out of that storm drain, the only storm drain. I will flood for sure with those in there. Now, I don't know why they're in there. I guess it's because you'd rather have the road base up on my lawn and all over my yard. I guess my time's up, but thank you for letting me blow.
Mayor, can I say something?
Yeah,
real
thank
quick?
you, David. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Go ahead.
David, it is we have been down there and our public works has been down there. There is only one drain for what, 100 and something yards. We've been down there. It ends up in,
It's like 300 yards.
well, yards, but anyway, it's a long, long ways, and it ends up in Plum Creek too. The Plum Drive right there, because there's nothing there. And so we've had Public Works go down there, and that's part of what our stormwater system is going to take care of. Because it's not getting down. I can hear it down there. We can hear it down there. We don't know if some of those culverts have been covered up or
Walnut
what.
Street, you've lost me. I don't know. That's not in my little area.
Yeah,
where
but
we do flood.
it's all connected. It's not going far enough west. We don't have enough to take care of Siesta, and so it's got to be redone. So
I'll say it's one drain, and it's a little tiny drain.
Yeah.
It was put back there in the 1975.
I understand. Yeah, I understand. It's being worked on right now.
In what way?
I'll talk to Public Works and see what the timeline is on that. I think,
Are we engineering to put in a new drain? That's what's got to happen.
I don't know that.
We'll respond.
Yeah, let's respond. I knew I didn't want to get into this, but I didn't want you to think that this is on the map right now. So
Okay. I'm glad that you called me back up here. I appreciate that. I'm hoping something will be done. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So I can promise you that we will respond back to you and let you know where we are. So. Okay. Looks like David Berry wants to come and do now and in our public hearing.
My comments at this time are the result of listening to discussions in the business meeting you just had. And I'm going specifically to the discussion on SLED and the subheading of riparian restrictions. So I would have hoped that the city council and staff would have learned something from last year when proposals are being put in place, pretty hard proposals, that tend to become locked in without any public notice or input, or better yet, meetings and specific input to people who live along the riparian streams. Because you are affecting us more than anyone else. And these are not, what I was looking at was not really going to safety, it was going to restrictions. So I'm asking that the council think about what happened last year when we packed this courtroom, this room, and obtained well over 100 signatures in a matter of 2 days. And that we actually go out and start having meetings with people who live along the creeks and get their input rather than beating our chests, your chests, someone's chests, saying we're going to be more restrictive than anyone else. Well, you're affecting the homeowners who live along that creek. And we who have lived here before the city was ever formed, voted to form this city, not so someone else could beat their chests about how restrictive we are, but to get our input so that we had more input, not less input than we had before. Please talk to us, have meetings in our neighborhoods, give notices to the people along the streams and take our input and consider it. Don't tell us what you're going to do. Ask us in a friendly way for our input so that we can come together on solutions. I was deeply troubled once again by presentations that already had restrictions for 25 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, what you can do, what you can't do, people who are already living there. That's just not the way we would want our city to be run, and hopefully not the way you really want to do it. Publishing things in a newspaper of general circulation as required by law, Intermountain Record, which no one reads and most people don't even know exists, is not public notice. So please start coming out to our neighborhoods, talking to us. If you want some help doing that, I'd be happy to give you our list that we motivated people with last time to be here. And let's start talking, please.
Great, thank you. So the, doesn't look like we have any hands up online, right? So with that, I am going to close the public comment period, citizen comment period rather. And our next item is a public comment period in which we will open to the public for any comments they might have regarding a proposed amendment of compensation for the city's elective and statutory officers. I'm actually going to have our city manager, Tim Tingey, give us some background on this before proceeding to public comment.
Okay, thank you. So there's a requirement in our code to look at compensation for statutory officers and elected officials. And this is something that's evaluated over time. The last time that this consideration or that there was a modification to that ordinance was in 2013. And so at that time, the salaries or the pay compensation for elected officials and statutory officers was put into place. There were also some components for cost of living included in that as well. So it's been that long. It's been close to 9 years ago where that was originally put into place. Since that time, a number of communities have looked at modifications to their compensation. Over the past few years, we have done market studies related to compensation for staff and for basically staff in the city, but we have not looked at the market comparables and compensation adjustments for elected officials and the statutory officers. So what we've done is back in the budget process, there was some conversation with our Benefits and Compensation Committee to look at market comparisons across the whole city. Is that something that staff and myself started looking at, as well as for the elected officials? And that's why we're bringing this forward today to you. What we've looked at is to try to do apples to apples comparisons with markets for the type of government entities that are similar to us. So where you have a mayor that is serving on a part-time basis, as well as council members serving on a part-time basis. We also looked at the market of Salt Lake County primarily. What we've looked at is for the mayor compensation, we reached out to all of the communities and were able to get responsive communities of 7 for the mayor positions. We had amounts from 58,000 at the high level down to 24,000 at the lower level. The average is about 42,000. So we propose to have an adjustment in market on this to be close to midpoint, a little bit below that average. And so the proposal we put together is for 40,000. That's what our proposal that we put together as staff as part of this. For the city council areas, we had 12 responsive cities within Salt Lake County that provided data for us. The high end is 38,000 down to the low end of 15,000. The average is 22,000, close to 22,700. And so what we looked at is being close to that midpoint, but a little bit below that. So at 22,005 and the mayor at 40,000. So based on the market comparables, other cities looking at this, based on market studies that we've done across the city, and also the length of time that we've even looked at this being at 9 years, we are proposing these adjustments to be considered. As far as the process, we talked about this we talked about it through the budget process and then had a conversation in the work session. We put together this proposal that has been out for public comment since last week. And then we're required to have a public hearing, which is what you're looking at, or public comment period, which is what you'll be considering here shortly. So I have more information if you'd like, but that is the process that we've gone through. We feel it's an appropriate time to look at this just because of the other communities that have done that and the length of time that it's taken or since we've evaluated this process, especially for elected officials. And so we have an ordinance in front of you, and that's the background information.
Thank you, Tim. So I am going to open the.
Mayor, may I ask one question?
Yeah.
Sure. In the wording of the ordinance, I know, is it have a start date, or is it just on implementation? Is it July 1st for the entire year, like we do most of our things, or is it a partial year this year and then?
It's effective July 1st of each year, commencing on 1st of July 2023.
Thank you, Councilmember Brack.
23 or 22? And the next one will be.
Correct.
So with that, I am going to open up the public hearing aspect of 5.1, the proposed amended compensation schedule for the city's elective and statutory officers. I do have a couple of comment cards. The first one would be Chanel.
Hello, I have a question before I start my comments. Will the compensation just be for the mayor and city council, or are there other people that will also be getting a raise in compensation, consideration and compensation?
I can address that. So this ordinance through the budget process, all of the other employees were evaluated through a merit proposal as well as cost of living. That was implemented as part of our budget process and the adoption of the budget. This tonight, the increase would be proposed for the elected officials. There are elements in this ordinance that talk about the statutory officers and what they receive, but that's through that budget process. So tonight, this is primarily the elected officials.
Okay, that does change my comments a little bit. And I did some research, and Cottonwood Heights cost of living is one of the highest in Salt Lake County. I am finding that difficult as a renter in the city to stay here as well. And I actually encourage our city council to give yourself a raise to meet that compensation, because it's really tough to kind of live here right now and support living here. And I love this city. So I encourage you guys. That's all.
Thank you, Chanel. Appreciate it. And we hope as well that you can stay here in Cottonwood Heights. We think it's an amazing place. Thank you. Dave Barry.
With the clarification that tonight's vote is only as to the council members and the elected officials, then that again changes things. But maybe I can just make a comment that I find the mechanism, as I understand it, to be for compensation in a city. Everyone would have to, I think, agree that it is there's no input from anyone not getting compensated from the city. Everyone's an employee of the city or an elected official of the city, but there's no citizen input on this committee, as I understand it, from what has been published whatsoever. So there's clear conflict of interest that just can't be avoided. Not to say that you aren't trying to feather your own, you are, I'm not saying you're trying to feather your own nest, but there needs to be some sort of a process here that is not 100% incorporating only people or restricting it to only people who are being compensated to decide what their compensation will be. And that needs to change. That would be my comment.
Thank you. So, and the only thing that I would add to that, I guess, is that's what the public hearing aspect of this is for, is we want, this has been published, I think, for a while now, and tried to put it on all of the city's social media, so that if anybody wanted to come in and talk about this process, that they would be able to do so. I am actually going to continue the public hearing on this and not close it. And we're gonna keep this open until August 2nd, our meeting on August 2nd. We will delay a vote on it until after we have a second.
And Mayor, we'll need a motion and
We'll do a motion. Yep, I was gonna do that. So if I could get a motion to delay the or to
continue.
continue the public hearing on item 5.1, proposed amended compensation schedule for the city's elective and statutory officers.
We continue the public hearing until August.
Second.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Individual vote.
No, you can have just a voice vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, maybe I could just jump in on one thing. The process to adjust officer compensation in Utah is statutory. It's based on Utah statute. The statute lays out exactly how the process proceeds, and that is exactly the process that the city has followed here.
Thank you, Shane. Okay, the next item on our agenda this evening is consideration of resolution 2022-38, amending the designated areas close to discharge of fireworks for 2022. Have our Assistant Chief Riley Pilgrim from UFA come up and address this.
All right, so I'm gonna do my best to walk us through this. Our restrictions are always fun. So, what I have here for you is the current restrictions as of today. And we had two citizens share some concerns with their area, and even for me, I'm learning more and more about the intricacies, and the challenge with Cottonwood Heights is we've tried to apply the state statute, which is typically 200 feet within open space or a dense wooded area or historical problematic fire behavior that we've experienced. And so what we tried to do is carve out certain areas. I know last year there was a big push to do restrictions all the way to 13th East, and that was kind of a valley-wide thing from Salt Lake City to Draper, both the east side and west side of the valley. All the fire chiefs, a lot of the councils were on board with just this blanket ban of fireworks, which we were able to pull off. And what we learned this year is a lot of councils got a variety of feedback, a lot of pushback, and so a lot of cities, including what we've done here in Cottonwood Heights, kind of went back to more of a, instead of a blanket ban, and more surgical restriction on these different areas. And as we've gone through this, we've seen and found and had residents share with us, hey, I think our area fits this. Would you look at this? Would you do that? And in this case, that's kind of what we did. Is we had two complaints that came in. Initially, one definitely met the definition. We had our fire prevention team go out and take a look at each one of these areas. And we feel strongly that these do fall in with the restrictions. And the challenge we have now is usually by June 1st, we have to make these decisions. And what's happened is extenuating circumstances have presented themselves with the dry weather and the ongoing, as was shared, the drought that's plagued us for 2 years now, and just no reprieve either between now and then. And now looking forward, we're getting some moisture, we're getting some rain, but it's not what I would call a reprieve from our current situation. And so what we've done is we've taken into consideration these two concerns and complaints that do have validity to them as far as their proximity to some open space and things that we probably would have been best to catch early on, but given the circumstances and where we are today, we feel these are very prudent. They fall within your ability, I think, as a council to make a decision, given our kind of extended circumstance of lack of moisture and a lack of any relief that we would hope to have at this point. And so what we're recommending, you'll see here, is we had two areas that were proposed to us by our prevention division. And I know it's hard to see with my mouse here, but we have, this is 3500 East. And then we have Creek Road right here. And what they discovered is there's a few areas here that would fall within that classification of 200 feet. And the other parameter within the statute that does help us out is we are supposed to stick to straight or identifiable lines, right? And what happens here is as we start doing carve outs, understand the restricted areas gets way more complicated for the residents. And so what we proposed initially, and this is what you saw in your packet, was just going east of 3500 East and south of Creek Road from Wasatch basically to Danish, just to do some straight line restrictions. Well, as Melissa and I started working on this, a GIS specialist, we discovered a few other areas that would have open space that just makes sense to restrict and eliminate confusion for the citizens. And so what happens here is when we restricted 35th eastward and Creek Road southward, we identify that it starts to create some other weird misunderstandings potentially for the residents. And so what's represented there, I'll see if I can pull this up, is when we actually implemented the restrictions and tried to fold in some other areas that were concerning, it actually created a, for a lack of better terms, a hole within certain areas, right? We started looking at these things and we identified it wasn't as clean as just 35th and Creek Road. There's some other areas that had potential 200 feet concerns. And so we started carving that out and we realized this is going to create too much confusion for the residents in that area. So what we landed on, and this was even today when Melissa got back into town and was able to focus on this, is a restriction. This map is not great. I'll go back to the first map, but a restriction that basically goes from Bengal Boulevard all the way down to towards Danish. And that's going to create a area that encompasses the 200 feet concerns that we had with some of these areas when we initiated the second round of restrictions. And just made it way more understandable and clear to the residents. And it encompassed one that had a concern that was just outside of the restriction. Now their home will be folded into that, which I think is fair. So I want to go back to this one to clearly articulate what we're doing. So basically, we've taken everything from Bengal Boulevard now south towards basically, which is Danish Oaks Drive and this new subdivision that's kind of off of Bengal, and then we have Majestic Ridge. So our proposal tonight, after all that, and if you're confused, we can walk back through that if there's any uncertainty, is basically go from that Majestic Ridge up to Bengal and everything south of Bengal Boulevard, which encompasses the two concerns that we had, as well as pockets of open space throughout this area that we would consider problematic. And I know the challenge we have now is we're past the deadline, so we're basing this off of extended circumstance / no relief or reprieve in sight from our current conditions to encapsulate one more area that we feel is pretty concerning. And then my goal is after this to work with Melissa and our fire prevention team just to start doing a really more thorough survey of Cottonwood Heights. And what we've noticed with the restrictions is they're tied to roads, but sometimes it's confusing to the residents. What we want to do is either for the new year or next 4th of July, we have some very clean parameters if we don't do another 13th East or something that aggressive. Something that's a little more clear and concise, but we feel like this will address a pretty legitimate concern that was brought to our attention. And just basing it off of current factors and like I shared, our environmental conditions, we feel like it's prudent and within your ability to do so to approve that additional restriction. Challenge will be communicating it. We'll work with Melissa if this is approved tonight to get it to the Solid County map GIS guy tomorrow. Then we'll put it on our website. We'll try to push that out there on our social media stuff and just constantly refer people. And if we do have problems in this area, I think as we've done our best is we educate before we take a more aggressive approach. And I think that'd be my suggestion for the next week is to just educate these residents if they do light fireworks in there. We'll do our best to mitigate that. So that's my presentation. That's a lot. Hopefully it's not too confusing, and I'm open to any questions or concerns or feedback you might have.
Thank you, Chief. Questions? No, I think you've done a great job explaining this, and we appreciate it. This is all in the name of safety, so we
Absolutely.
appreciate you helping to keep our. Can we talk after? Is that okay? Is it?
I can meet you after too. Yeah, it might be more appropriate. Somewhat familiar with that, yeah. Yeah, I'll meet with you after the meeting and we can kind of look at that and I can share with you. We're relatively aware of a lot of those areas. So I'd be happy to visit with you afterwards as well.
Thank you, Chief.
You bet.
Appreciate you. Yep. Okay, any other questions, comments? So at that point, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2022-38, amending the designated areas closed to discharge of fireworks for 2022.
I'll send out that motion, accept resolution number 2022-38.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Newell and a second from Councilmember Burrell. We'll now call for the vote. Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Next on our list is consideration of resolution 2022-39, accepting requests for indemnification. We discussed this item earlier in our work session. Are there any other questions or comments from the council on this? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2022-39, accepting requests for indemnification.
I would make the motion, I would move to approve resolution 2020-39. I make the note as have in the past that this is shall approve by the statute. We do have a reservation right. For some reason, employees are found to be working outside of the So, this resolution.
And I second that, Mayor.
Thank you. With a motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken, a second from Councilmember Peterson. Any questions? Okay, I will call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
and I will vote. Our last legislative item this evening is going to be a resolution, consideration of resolution 2022-40, which is approving an agreement with SIRC, SIRQ Inc. for construction manager general contractor services. We actually also discussed this item earlier in our work session. Any other questions or comments from the council before we proceed?
Did they include completion date or that part of this, or?
It's estimated to be a 12-month construction process after the plans are finalized, and we're probably, I think, probably several months off from having plans finalized.
Yeah, we're looking to get in before winter next year.
As long as the concrete's available, right?
Great. At this point, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2022-40, approving an agreement with CERC Inc. for construction manager general contractor service.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken and a second from Councilmember Newell. Questions, comments? Hearing none, I will now call for the vote. Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Member Bracken,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. The last item for this evening is just approval of the consent calendar, the minutes for our meetings held on July 5th. Could I have a motion to approve these minutes?
I'll have a motion to approve the minutes last month.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Newell and a second from Councilmember Burrell. All in favor of approving these minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That concludes the items on our tonight's agenda. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
And I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned.